Welcome to Waiting on the Trade, a comics book club for people who can't keep up with monthly comics. I'm Matt Ledger.
I'm Patrick Fitzgerald Fleck.
And I'm Jonathan Gurney.
This month, we're talking about Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1, a fresh take on everyone's favorite web spinner from Jonathan Hickman, Marco Checchetto, David Messina, Matthew Wilson, and Corey Petit. Now, in case you need a refresher, Ultimate Spider-Man tells the story of a married, middle-aged Peter Parker who was prevented from becoming Spider-Man in his teens. An upheaval in Peter's world provides him with the chance to become the hero he was destined to be. But in a world that's set against him, and with additional responsibilities to bear, is this Peter Parker up to the challenge of being Spider-Man? We'll find out today. I was really nervous through that whole thing that Jono was going to start typing stuff into the middle of my intro because his cursor is right there. It's right there in the middle. And I was like, oh God, he's going to start typing words and I'm just going to read them. I'm just going to track with it and I'm going to read it. But
I'm Ron Burgundy.
I do actually, I like, no, to be very, very serious with you, I had to tamp down my performative urge to hijack the intro of this podcast and be like, welcome to Talking to Spider-Man. This is the podcast where we talk exclusively about Spider-Man every month. Every month will be a fresh take on the character of Spider-Man with the three of us reading Spider-Man comics. And I really had to tell myself I will not do that. I will not do that to Matt.
John, I'm here for
if you want to do that, if you want to do that, I mean, I think we've game. Let's talk after the episode.
Yeah, my people will contact your people. But not actual mainstream Amazing Spider-Man, because I can't force myself to read that right now. But that's a different podcast.
Oh yeah, so that's an interesting one. So let's talk about Spider-Man, because my introduction to Spider-Man was not comics at all. It was the 1994 animated show, Spider-Man. The what was that one called?
Spider-Man.
Yeah,
with the weird '90s creepy font. And the song that I sing and have gotten stuck in Kat's head somehow, even though she's never seen this show about Spider-Blood, radioactive Spider-Blood. Like, if I say Spider-Blood, Kat will say radioactive Spider-Blood now. And I'm sorry that I've done this to her, but that's the life that we live.
I think that's what marriage is about, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was my introduction, was that one. That was like peak animated kids TV, in my opinion. Like really great episodes, split between Spider-Man trying to help various villains overcome what had driven them to be villains, or Spider-Man taking a day off to spend an evening with a Make-A-Wish child, sort of things. Like, just generally really interesting. So that was my first introduction to it. And obviously I'm not going to talk ad nauseum, but obviously I couldn't access the comic books where I was growing up. But we still had the Spider-Man films. I remember getting an uncle bought the bootleg DVD of Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi films. And then when I just moved to the UK, I remember the first film that I saw in the cinema was Spider-Man 2, which I still think is probably a very, very high watermark for superhero films to this day.
That's Doc
But then
Ock,
it was
right?
finally,
Yep.
Yes, Doc Ock, okay. And just like a genuinely great Spider-Man story for like just the I will cover so much of that, Pat. I'm so sorry in advance. But in about 2009. I think it was 2009. Callum encouraged me to friend of the show and regular guest host Callum Smith encouraged me to pick up Ultimate Spider-Man, which is Brian Michael Bendis's run on Spider-Man. I guess it's not really fair to call it a run when it is in my opinion, the definitive and best version of Spider-Man that has ever been put in print or any other media.
So I have a couple points quick before you keep going.
I'm sorry. I'll continue my lecture in a minute.
No, you're good. I love when people come on the podcast and talk, so I don't have to talk, Jono. You're great. But A, I don't think you're wrong. And B, because I was thinking about like doing a jokey, like we're talking about Ultimate Spider-Man. No, not the Bendis Bagley one. Like I feel like that really is it's the Bendis Bagley run, because like that's 20 something issues, I think, of them
I
on
believe
the
it's
book as like the same
133.
creative team. Is it 133?
Oh no,
Like,
no, sorry. As
man.
them as the same creative team, I
Yeah.
think you might be right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because at some point, I think it's Stuart Immonen pops in before the end of volume one. I'm looking at it on the shelf right now, but it doesn't have credits on the side of the books, unfortunately. But yeah, at some point in the initial run, Stuart Immonen hops in. So I think it's like 100. It's like it might be 130 consecutive of them as a creative team. I think it's the longest Marvel consecutive creative team, beating out like Stanley and Jack Kirby shit, which is wild.
Yes, Bendis has been one of the longest running Spider-Man writers, beating out Stanley and Kirby, which is well deserved, in my opinion, for his quality. But yeah, yeah.
Versus like this book that we read, like I do really love the art, but like they couldn't even make it 3 issues with the same creative team. So like, there's that. Continue, Jono. The lecture can continue now.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, I mean, Bendis's Ultimate Spider-Man was my comic introduction, and I think probably the best introduction to that. I think it does, because obviously it does away with a lot of for people who don't know what the Ultimate series was. It was like Marvel were like, what if we rebooted these in a different universe and allowed them to have slightly different stories, and we didn't have to have all that continuity burdening them down, and instead we could build an entirely different continuity that we would have to reckon with later on in the in the business of making comic books. So yeah, that's the sort of the arc for me of getting into Spider-Man very early on, and obviously I've continued to love the character since then. I think the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, the Tom Holland Spider-Man, the video games. Yeah, I think that there's just there's a lot to love about Spider-Man, to the point where I would even go so far, maybe a bit out there, but to say that Spider-Man to me represents kind of an American myth, sort of on the level of like, this is going to really piss off your European audience, but on the level of like potentially like Beowulf or Thor and Loki, in the sense of that there's just like this is a character that has this is a character that has been around for like what 60 years, and clearly has resonated so much throughout media. Like there is so much ancillary media that has Spider-Man or a version of Spider-Man in it. There's the Spider-Verse now. There's all of this kind of continuity around this character, and I think that is a real testament to the work that has gone into Spider-Man, and also just like the core idea of and I mean the iconic with great power comes great responsibility, and I think that's kind of more than any Marvel character. I think Spider-Man is the one that I find the most interesting. More than any comic book character, even on the DC side, I think the only one who potentially even comes close would be Batman.
Yeah. I think like
Yeah,
I've circled around writing this blog post a couple times because I think it's like possibly too obvious, but like Spider-Man is the best superhero, and it's not even close. Like he
so
might
glad
not
that
be
you
my
agree.
favorite superhero all the time, but like it's the whole thing is bound up in him in a way that it is not like in other characters. There's just like some sort of additional angle to it, or like some additional aspect to it that is like complicated, and like Spider-Man is what superheroes should be. Like you are given great power, you have great responsibility, you go do superhero shit, and also there's like this whole soap opera drama surrounding you as you're doing that, and like partially as a result of that, like he's the
Yes,
best
and that is what
superhero.
makes him so, yeah, exactly. And it's that those tense dining room conversations where Peter is sitting there knowing that he's just gotten back from stopping a superpowered, or even just from stopping a bodega robbery.
Yeah.
And somebody says, "Oh, Peter, how was your science class?" And he'll be like, "Oh, it was fine." And then they'll be like, "Really?" Because I got a phone call from the school that you weren't there. It's those moments where it's like, "Ah, that's right. He's living these two lives and he's having to balance them both, and it's impossible to balance them both."
So,
And
like,
that's what
one
makes
of
it
the
so more interesting.
One of the best Spider-Man scenes for me is actually from No Way Home, and it's because it's something that I hadn't actually seen in a comic somehow, and it's the scene where Peter and Liz Allen are being driven to the prom by Liz Allen's dad, who is the Vulture. And like
It's a good
Yes.
scene.
the
Yeah.
Vulture knows Spider-Man is Spider-Man, Spider-Man knows the Vulture is the Vulture, and Liz Allen does not know that either of them is either of those people. And like it's such a fucking good Spider-Man scene of his like both like you were talking about, Jado, like both of those lives like coming together and like complicating each other and like getting in each other's way and like making each other more messy. It's just like it's probably a top 10 Spider-Man scene for me, which is wild because it's
Absolutely.
like it's from the movies, but
Well, I think that that's absolutely like it's that tension, and I think that and I do agree with you that there are a lot of problems with the movies that we can go into, but it's also it's this it's that constant tension because Spider-Man cannot not be Spider-Man, right? He cannot make the easy choice. He cannot simply go, I'll just call the police and let them deal with this. Because there is a moment in his life where he stood back and didn't act, and that ended with the death of someone he loved. And that guilt is almost like is what drives him to always have to make the hard choice. Like it's that tension, you know that, and again to use the films in No Way Home, where he's told like basically, oh, these villains were all just about to die. They were all captured moments before their death, and he makes the choice of like, well, then we have to try and save them. And it's like, well, no, you don't. These are all bad guys. They're all like, this choice will cost you everything. And he's like, no,
yeah, but
that's
he's
the choice we,
Spider-Man.
we have to make. Yeah, that's that. There is no other choice to make. It's not even a question. It's like in the trolley problem, Spider-Man would put his own body in front of the trolley to stop it.
I mean, he
rather than
literally
let it.
stops that train,
We
right?
saw that scene,
Spider-Man
yeah.
2.
Exactly. Which is why the worst Spider-Man stories, in my opinion, are when the Marvel Universe intrudes. I am left cold when Iron Man is zooming around, giving Spider-Man gadgets, picking Spider-Man up. I just find it to be like I think that it when he's having to deal with cosmic threats and stuff, it's just like, well, yeah, but Spider-Man is most interesting when he's acting locally, when he's part of his community, when he's doing the hard work of being a superhero, not when he's sitting in the boardroom with the other superheroes talking about how they need to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Yeah, Spider-Man as a
Which
member of the Avengers is kind of blah. So how did you feel about this comic in which Iron Man shows up and gives Spider-Man a suit?
yeah, I guess I like it's very like okay, so it's very unfair to come in and judge what should be a long running series by the first volume, because obviously there's so much work that needs to go into setting up future storylines and stuff. It's almost like this is the foundation episode, so there's so much just like scaffolding in this book that has to be done, so that will pay off presumably later on down the line. But I have to say that a Spider-Man who gets told that he is destined to be Spider-Man by it's not even Iron Man, I believe it's Iron Lad. In my research, I don't know. I kind of felt like that undercuts a lot of the journey for Spider-Man. I feel like it just becomes like he's been told he has a job offer, and should go and take it. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts, though.
I don't disagree with that actually, and I don't know if I'd thought about this book in that vein so much because like there kind of is and there isn't a real great power, great responsibility moment in this book, right? Like
They're
the words are
verbatim.
said later on. But that's not the thing. And like I think that's part of what John was saying, right? Is like Harry Osborn just kind of says like, "Hey, you have great power and you have to have great responsibility." But that's not the same thing as kind of like
It made me groan
living
so loud.
I mean, it's a Ultimate Spider-Man comic book. That's going to have great power, great responsibility.
Well, sure, but like Harry over dinner? What? Okay.
I really found that hilarious as a twisting of when that was going to show up and how. But like to Jono's point, this is not a Spider-Man who had a clear Uncle Ben moment, at least that we saw like on the page, right? Like, so
Mhm.
Aunt May has been killed as part of the like weird orbital laser New York attack. So there's that, but it's not really the same thing in a way that I kind of agree with you, Jono, now that I'm thinking about it, of like Iron Man showing up and telling Spider-Man he needs to be Spider-Man is not the same as Spider-Man like deciding he should be Spider-Man, but like at the same time this is a Peter Parker who very much still seems like he's in the same vein of like I could be doing more with my life. So I'm not completely
That's
put off by it, but I hadn't thought about it in
yeah.
exactly the terms you put it in until now.
And midlife crisis spider Peter Parker is kind of also like, again, and this is really unfair to the book because there is but it is it is the space that we occupy in that we've done middle-aged Peter Parker before, right? And it still feels like his life is going very well for him to be feeling like he's not doing enough, right? Like inexplicably, he has a job in print media that is enough to maintain a relatively like what looks like a good lifestyle.
Mhm.
Like his biggest like thing seems to be walking to a memorial for his Aunt May, which like even that he's just kind of like, he just seems to be kind of sleepwalking through his life. Like I understand that is some of that sort of unrecognized destiny, maybe, but I don't know. I just didn't get any sense of Peter being that torn up about his life. Like I didn't really feel that. Like the this is so unfair because like teenage Peter is of course always going to be torn up because he's a teenager. He's going through lots of changes. I mean, the radioactive spider bite is almost a stand-in for puberty, and is like it really feels like teenage Peter Parker could go either way. Could be the greatest superhero ever, as we see, or could also be a terrifying supervillain.
Yeah, definitely.
And so like that's like such a middle-aged Peter Parker is just kind of bored and like so goes up on the rooftop and lets a spider bite him and then gets a magic suit.
Yeah,
It just didn't quite hit. Sorry, Pat.
I
Please, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
That's so good. Yeah, I would agree. I think the recontextualizing how Peter gets his powers, the fact that in this he chooses to gain the power as opposed to he accidentally has this power, it really does give a whole different perspective on everything. Teenage, like normal
Yeah.
teenage Peter accidentally getting these powers, and then he's stuck with these powers. He has no choice. So the kid is going to use it for good to help people because Ben gave him that with great power lecture.
To be fair, first he decides to try pro wrestling. Let's not gloss over that.
He's a kid. He's a kid. It's going to happen. But the fact that this is middle-aged Peter, and every time he said that he wanted to be a hero, it made me like, it didn't sit well with me. It's like, I don't think Peter does it to be a hero. He does it because he like, I don't know. It just recontextualized everything and not for the better for me.
That is very, very well said. I think you're absolutely right. It's this notion of the powers do not make Spider-Man. It's the choice to do good that makes Spider-Man. And you're right. He doesn't do it to be a hero. He does it because he recognizes that there is like no other choice other than the path to always put yourself in danger to protect others. And that's so core to the identity. And we see that, I mean, that's not just Peter Parker, that's also Miles Morales, right? Like that's this whole wrestling with this legacy of what do these powers mean is so integral to the character. So to just kind of casually be handed them, you're absolutely right. That changes things.
It also makes the fact that original like young teenage Peter is endangering his family because he's doing these things. But again, we just said he's doing it because he has to at this point. The fact that middle-aged Peter in this comic actively chose, and we didn't see him like, oh, what about endangering my family? Like he lets his secret identity slip almost immediately with his children.
Oh, that is such a good point.
It's
Yeah.
just like, okay, you took it because you think you want to be a hero because some projection told you should have been. Also, how the heck did Matt? You've read this whole series, right? You know where this goes.
I mean, I'm fairly current. Again, it's still ongoing, so I don't know
is
where
it?
it
Oh
goes,
god.
but yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, do they explain how not Iron Man had a radioactive spider in a vial for him?
Well, Pat, why would you not?
Okay, anyways, that made no sense. Like, what are the chances here? I just had this laying around. Anyways, the fact that middle-aged Peter
to that point,
took it.
To
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
point, I actually did read the Wikipedia page about the events that led up to this book, and I still am not clear exactly on what happened.
So when I wrote a review of issue 1, and I was like, I got to the back of it, and what I really liked about it is like Iron Man, Iron Lad shows up and is like, hey, all this stuff is happening and is true. And Peter's like, what? And Iron Man's like, yeah, this is happening. He's like, what? Because it doesn't matter, right? Like, what matters is like, I think it's kind of interesting actually to be given the choice to become Spider-Man. Like, I
But
don't
the
know
fact
that
that
it
it
makes
is a
him less.
choice.
I don't know that it makes him less than for choosing to become Spider-Man. If anything, it might make him. I see where you're saying like his motivations may not be quote unquote pure. I'm willing to ascribe to the fact that Peter Parker is still Peter Parker, and thus his motivations are good. And like being given the choice and still choosing it, like there are times where like main continuity Spider-Man has been like, fuck this, I don't want to be Spider-Man anymore. Like
Sure.
please get rid of this for me. So
Mhm,
like
mhm.
to see a
But that makes
dude.
more sense again in the context of the way that he was given those powers
Yes,
accidentally.
absolutely.
It was
Also, a teenager is not going to have the foresight to like, oh, I'm going to take these powers, I'm going to save these people, I'm going to fight these bad guys. Oh, if they find out who I am, my family and friends are going to be in mortal danger. This man is what, in his mid-30s? He should understand there are consequences
I
to
mean,
his
that's
actions.
true, but like, what are you gonna do? Not fight? Like, you're given the chance to fight. This world is messed up, man. Like, it's. I don't know if you guys, because this is actually like a between the lines thing, and I think it comes up more in other comics slash like the Ultimates. Like, the United States does not actually exist in this comic. Like, the New York isn't within like the Union or whatever. Like, the world is very messed up in this like alternate timeline thing. So
Didn't
like,
catch any of the world building of that. So.
Yeah.
which is
no,
fine.
I,
I don't think you need to for this book, honestly. But like, again, like you're given the choice to fight and you choose not to fight. Like, what does that make you, right? Like,
I mean, that's
I don't
fine.
know.
I'm just saying this is an entirely different Spider-Man
Yes, for
because
sure.
of the way he got his powers.
Definitely.
I mean, like we can do a bit of the heavy lifting in terms of like, okay, so we always know in teenage Peter Parker is always conflicted, and we see a lot of that conflict on the page. I mean, maybe Peter is like middle-aged Peter is internalizing that conflict, but that's putting a lot on me as the reader
yes,
to try and understand that motivation. And that just like, am I projecting the complexity, or is it there? Is kind of, I guess, where I get kind of like fall off that a bit.
Also, Mary Jane doesn't seem to care. Like, if one of
Oh
them,
my
like,
God,
I
you're
needed,
so
I needed
right.
one of them to be like, oh, I have children. It's not just about, like, I needed one of them to be the adult, one of them to be the parent, and say, okay, this is a huge
when
choice.
your partner sits you down and says, "I'm not happy. I want more," that should be like a huge like, okay, well, hey, we've got 2 kids. We should try his couple counseling. We should try literally anything other than you dressing up and fighting bad guys.
I don't know,
Because that
Jono. This
is
seems to be
insane.
working though.
Yeah.
But does it? He's not even good at it. He's not even good at it.
Well, yeah, he's like 20 years behind. How is he supposed to be good at it, Jono?
But that's my point. It's like, okay, dude, maybe take some self-defense classes first as an adult, and then go out
And
there
then
and
go
fight.
fight
I
back.
did want to know, like, where is he? Yeah, where is he getting? Oh, okay, yep.
Like, you made the point. At least Peter tried to be a professional wrestler before he tried superheroing. Like, he got some kind of experience.
Oh, that's so funny.
I I would argue against real life Spider-Man has combat experience until like God, these are the things that are buried in my brain. I haven't even read these comics. Like he does eventually do martial arts training with someone,
He
but like
does. I remember
Someone-
something about he loses his spider sense, and that actually turns out to be a big part of his combat success is because he's able to
Yeah.
sense when he's in danger, and so then he's forced to actually do real training, which that sounds like a fun idea for a one shot, but I don't know that I would particularly care to read that. As long as,
yeah,
you are
it's
right.
a
Like
dumb
training montage would be a bit dull, but I mean, like some kind of thing. A middle-aged that is another thing. All right, there is a
Nope.
lot of assumption of competency here that is potentially not earned because we get two middle-aged, actually elderly white guys lose their jobs and they decide that they will be the ones that will speak truth to power
Truth.
and that they can make it
Oh
happen.
no, don't
And-
come at me with negative discussions of Ben and Joda. Ben and Joda are great.
I
Matt
look,
loves
J.
the
Jonah
voice
Jameson
of the elderly white
is-
man. Yes. They speak
J.
truth.
Jonah Jameson.
Okay, you guys
a-
can
is
jump
a
on this comic as
top-tier
much as you
character.
want, but if you try to tell me that the scene where Joda says, "Hey Ben, all I've had for breakfast for 30 years is a cup of coffee," do you think that's gonna have negative effects on me? And Ben's like, "Will it matter if I say yes?" And Joda's like, "No." And Ben's like, "Well, I don't see why it would then." And then Joda's like, "I knew it." And Ben facepalms like. That's one of the best scenes in this comic, hands down. And if you guys didn't appreciate that, then I can't help you.
I will give you that. I really enjoyed their interactions in this comic book, and I felt like a Spider-Man story just about them, I'd be okay with because I've always found JJ to be one of the most interesting Spider-Man characters because he judges Spider-Man so harshly. Like and that is what Spider-Man needs. Spider-Man needs to be constantly under the microscope because like that seems to be lacking for all the other people. They can get away with almost anything, and Spider-Man cannot because his entire community is watching him. And J. Jonah Jameson also, again, we're coming back to the Bendis run, but has some of the best moments in terms of being forced to reconcile with some of the realities of running a newspaper in a climate where billionaires can just buy good press. But again, I didn't actually find Ben that interesting as a character,
No.
which is maybe on me. Like, I think he got some good moments, but maybe it's more just because I'm not familiar with Ben as a character, as other than a plot device to motivate Spider-Man, which is really unfair to Ben.
He does very much have, like, I don't know, for not being the protagonist of the book, he kind of has protagonist syndrome where, like, he's very, like, straightforward by the book. Like, you kind of know exactly what he's gonna do before he does it. So, like, I kind of get
Mhm.
that. Like, I like Ben, but if you're like, is he my favorite character in the book? No.
He sort of came off
For those
cold
reasons.
to me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he wasn't
yeah.
very loving or like friendly to his family all that much. Like there's the scene where he's babysitting with Jonah. And then there's like a couple of cute scenes where he's actually talking to his grandkids. But like other than that, it's him being all serious about the paper.
Yeah. They did get this is maybe look, the art in this book is gorgeous, and I will absolutely go to bat for the art. But a lot of the scenes feel very claustrophobic. Like it feels like there's like for a Spider-Man book, there's usually a lot of New York, right? Like New York is like the almost like the unspoken character in the books. There's lots of like big spaces. There's lots of that sort of stuff. This felt like there wasn't a lot of that. Like we did get to see some establishing shots and things like that, but a lot of it seems to take place in restaurants or bars or in sort of like nondescript apartment locations. Whereas there's the great scene between Ben and Jonah, which takes place in a bar. It's the first time that it feels like you get to see a bit of New York that isn't just close-ups of these people's faces.
Generic backgrounds.
Yeah, which I think actually almost wasn't fair to the art because the art was really beautiful, and I would have liked to have seen more. Like, I mean, there are, I guess, at the start of every month, which is the framing device for the book. There are wide angle shots of like the bridge and construction. But I don't know. Did you guys feel that New York didn't really seem to be playing as big a part?
Yeah,
Not from-
I would agree with that. I didn't actively notice it while reading, but yeah, I'd agree. What I noticed is it's mainly with the dinner date. The 9x9 grids were starting to drive me insane.
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there's so much text and there's nothing happening. I am losing. It's so boring.
I mean, the art really did some heavy lifting. Yeah.
If we made fun of the Ring of Fire or whatever it was called, that horrible Gambit and Rogue comic for having too much text, I feel like this one
is not
stumbled.
even close to that level.
No, I agree.
You take it back.
No, Matt, I stand by it. Some of these panels.
No, in that comic, there were like 4 different giant word balloons in the same panel.
It is worse. This is towing the line, Matthew.
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm gonna copy this picture right here and send it to you. And we're gonna just.
Fine.
Speaking of the dinner scene, which I do agree with. I think I think the art is still beautiful in those panels, and I think that they're doing a lot of heavy lifting for fairly, as you said, text heavy scenes. Does it feel like this is just being set up for your sudden but inevitable betrayal with Harry Osborn?
I think that's
I guess that's the.
I think that's really interesting, actually, because so I think a lot of what this book does very smartly is like playing with expectations of like how the mainline characters would or wouldn't act, and so because of what we know about quote unquote Harry Osborn, right? Like the other versions of Harry, like you're just kind of waiting for it, and like when will it happen? I will give you a spoiler. It hasn't happened yet. It's like I think 18 issues in at this point, roughly. It hasn't happened yet. They're actually still very much like friends and like working together, and also like Peter is a good influence on Harry in a way that might, I don't know, mitigate some of his Osborn-ness. So like
that's good. Because that was genuinely a criticism that I was going to have. Is like I feel like we've seen this song and dance, and it undercuts the tension for me because I'm like, at a certain point, Harry's going to say we have to kill the Kingpin, and Spider-Man's going to go, no, we can't do that, and then they'll fight, and it'll be it'll all be on. But obviously, that's not happened. Yeah,
I was gonna say so far it's the other way around. Again, is that just like trying to keep it like how long can you string it along? I don't know. Yeah. We'll see. But like I think that's like the scene where Jonah in issue 1 is yelling Parker, Parker, and you're like, oh, I know what's happening, and then you have no idea what's actually happening.
It was
like,
clever. Yeah.
I like those bits. Like I know they're cute. They might be overly cute, and like they're very squarely aimed at me, I guess, of like
anyone who knows
like anyone who knows anything about Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a very called shot, but like I enjoyed all of them. So take that for what it's worth.
No. That is actually no, because that's good. Because I was
coming to defend Ultimate Spider-Man, the sales juggernaut of the charts.
No, look, I'm glad to hear
do it. I find it very fun. But.
No, look, I'm happy to hear that is not the case, because that is the thing. Like I've only read volume 1 and I haven't read any of the surrounding books for this, but it, like rebooting Spider-Man again to just have the same storylines happening with Harry Osborn becomes the Goblin, betrays Peter. Otto Octavius, he's going to become Doc Ock and he's going to fight Peter. Like Spider-Man has really interesting villains, but just reheating them for a different sort of storyline is kind of dull. So if that's not what's happened, I'm really happy to hear it.
I have a couple questions linked to like your reading of the original Ultimate Spider-Man, actually, that I wanted to ask you, Jono. And I guess the first one probably is like, how do you feel about here we are, we're in 2024, 2025, and like the first real villain that the writer has decided to put Spider-Man up against again is once again the Kingpin. Like, what does that say about the era we've been living in for like 25 years, right? Like original Ultimate Spider-Man was 2000. Like, how do you feel about that?
I think, well, I think Kingpin is a fantastic villain, because there's a lot to like about the idea of I mean, less so when he has superpowers or he's been genetically modified or whatever's happened in the book. But just because this is somebody who there is like most Spider-Man villains, there is a core of tragedy with Fisk, and that motivates that person to build a criminal empire. And in many ways, like you hear, not in this book necessarily, but certainly in Ultimate Spider-Man, the Fisk criminal empire is a criminal empire, but it also does give a certain predictability to crime in New York. Like, yes, it's not ideal that there's crime, but little old ladies are not being shot in robberies. Like there is like a certain respectability almost to the crime, which I know is terrible.
Like an underlying order, right?
Precisely. And that is where the tension again of what we've discussed with Spider-Man comes in, because Spider-Man cannot accept that there can be that kind of arrangement, right? So like in Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, Ultimate Comics was the weird sort of like reboot
Ultimate
that
Spider-Man,
they did, I guess.
Parentheses 2000, as opposed to Ultimate Spider-Man, parentheses 2024.
2024, exactly. Like there was a great moment where Peter Parker actually gets fired by J. Jonah Jameson because he questions why they don't do reporting on, like why they're always going after Spider-Man, but they don't report on Fisk. And J. Jonah Jameson loses it on him and fires him. And then later on, there's a great scene in the car park of all places where he confesses that the reason that he doesn't see Spider-Man as a hero is because he lost his son in a I think it was a space incident. I haven't read the books in a long time, but it's like it's such a great human moment where you get to see like J. Jonah Jameson isn't wrong, because Spider-Man isn't a hero. Heroes are the ordinary everyday people who do their jobs really well and advance science, advance the cause of peace, all those sorts of things. Spider-Man is certainly a crime fighter, but in J. Jonah Jameson's eyes, he's not a hero. And the reality of the job that J. Jonah Jameson has to do is that if he is always going against people like Fisk, he won't be able to do his job anymore because he'll probably be murdered.
Yeah.
So like Fisk is one of the best supervillains purely for the fact of that his evil is so ground level. It's so like low level, and Spider-Man still cannot allow it to exist. So in this version in this book where he seems to be a baron of some sort, or there's some weird thing, I believe he's got.
Yeah, like the world is like divided up among powers, and then within the powers, Fisk is like the ruler of New York / whatever territory. It doesn't matter that much, but like, yes, he is essentially the kingpin of New York, which is what he is, right? Like that's not I don't know.
But again, like, I mean, if that is maintaining a certain peace in New York, because it's like you said, this world is quite chaotic. If that is like having him in power means that your average person can go to work and not get murdered senselessly, that seems like it would be kind of the compromise that we might make in our daily life. We might say, well, it's not ideal, but it does mean that people are safe. It does mean that, things are a bit more predictable. And then you've got these guys crashing in to his penthouse, getting the absolute tar beaten out of them by him, simply because they cannot allow that to be the case. Like, and I guess again, without knowing the broader picture of what's going on in the worlds in this comic book, it's hard to know. I always find Fisk to be interesting, but less so when he's like some sort of superpowered. Yeah, I don't know.
Really superpowered, Jono. He's just got like an adamantium skeleton or something. It's fine.
I think they're just cool tattoos. It's just, aura.
Yeah, those. Yeah. Again, the art does be really great work there.
So part of the reason I asked is like I feel like in Ultimate Spider-Man parentheses 2000, what Bendis was doing is like, okay, here's this teenager. I'm going to very quickly, because I think technically Green Goblin was first, but whatever. But like very quickly, like second arc, throw him up against like a representation of not just like chaotic evil, but like systemic evil in a way that was really interesting to me as a teen, of like, you throw this teenager out into the real world, and it's like, what is he going to actually be able to do against this guy? And like, eventually, Kingpin comes back in Ultimate Spider-Man, right? Like, Peter is able
Oh,
to,
several times. Yeah.
yeah, like Peter is able to get him like thrown out of the city for a little bit, but like the way that systems of power work, like Fisk is on top of it. And I found it
He's got
curious.
good lawyers. Yeah.
Yeah, I found it curious that like it's 2024. We've got middle-aged married Peter Parker, and Hickman decides to make essentially the same choice as Bendis of like, oh yeah, actually we're just gonna throw him up against like systemic evil again, like stuff that you can't really actually eradicate or get rid of. And it's like, wow, what does that say about? Because like Jono, you grew up with like, well, not grew up with, but like you read Ultimate Spider-Man parentheses 2000 at a certain point in your life, and now you're reading this book, and I think they're very much. I think this book knows that it's in conversation with the other book. So like putting this Peter up against the Kingpin again in like a very similar way is like very interesting to me. And like what does it say about how the world has or hasn't progressed, mostly hasn't progressed in the 24 years between those two books coming out? Like I don't know.
I agree. I think I would have been fine with Kingpin popping up as the owner of the paper, because I think that's a very interesting look at billionaire media ownership and the problems that can have. But do you think that the reason that Kingpin is the quote unquote official first villain is because of the wider storyline, the context in which this book is set?
Definitely. Yeah, like I think this whole world is like very systematically set against the idea of heroes and quote unquote good existing at all. And I think the Kingpin represents that really well, and that's why he's in here for the first arc and like being the first villain. And like
so in that
Go
context
ahead.
though, I don't pick up on that at all in terms of this world being set against good. I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is, like, in the wider context of if I'm just reading this Spider-Man book, I don't understand why Iron Man or Iron Lad is appearing as a hologram. I don't understand why the Kingpin is the Kingpin of New York. I don't have any of that context. And so I think that this is this brings me back to my point about, like, I think Spider-Man stories are the worst when that sort of stuff is allowed to interfere, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah,
like you're
I
not
think I
like
get that.
yeah. What about you, Pat? How did you pick up on it?
No, I agree. I'm posting the paragraph
posting
again at the beginning. It's like, oh, world building.
This is a question I was going to ask you guys too, and I will let you talk after I ask this question, Pat. I promise.
Sure.
But like the question I had, even when reading issue 1, because like I didn't read there's an intro miniseries to like this whole new Ultimate line. Didn't read it because no one read it, which is part of what Jono was saying, I think, before we were recording, of like this Ultimate Spider-Man book like sold out immediately. It's because no one knew to order enough of it because the initial miniseries did not go over well. But like, how did you guys? I mean, we kind of answered this question, but like, how did you guys find integrating into this like quote unquote new world? And I'll start with you, Pat.
I mean, I didn't catch like that paragraph they give us that like sets it up. I assume summarizes whatever issue you were talking about that
Yeah.
establishes stuff. That was the only indication that like there was a terrorist attack or something, and it seems like Stark, Tony did it. I guess the world seems to be running okay. Like I don't see like there's not like fascist police forces on the street or anything. Like it looks like it's okay. So I didn't catch any, like they told us that evil was like bad guys are in charge and the world is not as it should be, but they're saying that and they're not showing it. So when Harry and Peter are putting on their super powered costumes, which by the way, I'm so sick and tired of the nanite suit. I didn't like it in the movies. I hate it in this comic book.
Amen.
Just come on. Anyways, so they put on their fancy suits and they go and fight the quote unquote bad guys because Harry says that the Kingpin is it. it didn't. The motivation wasn't clear for me.
I will say that is actually a thing that I have had an issue with so far in the book, is that like this quote unquote evil empire, people do seem to just be able to go about their lives.
Yeah,
and,
like what's so
nothing
bad?
is
Like,
really happening.
if we see like shots of maybe outside New York, there's like horrible mistreatment of people or like minorities or like something to show that the maker's world is actually something to be fought against, but it's not here, so I don't know.
I mean, the Kingpin still
Did you
sucks,
guys?
but
Sure,
Yeah.
but he always
Yeah.
sucks.
but like to wider than that, yeah, there's not a lot of justification. Sorry, Jono, I talked over you.
No. I'm very guilty of that, especially when it comes to Spider-Man. But did you guys feel? And I don't know. Like I'm speaking obviously as a non-American here, but did you feel that there was almost like a clumsy 9/11 style illusion, or am I just projecting that because it's New York and seeing a giant building destroyed and a
Building
memorial
being blown
is,
up. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if it's. I don't know if I would describe it as that precisely. I don't think you're wrong at the same time. Like when I initially reviewed like the first issue, I was talking about how this felt very much like a post-COVID comic to me, and it still kind of
Interesting.
Good
does.
point. Yeah.
Of like, there's a lot of talking in here, especially in Tony's bit where he shows up and info dumps stuff, and I know you guys didn't like that. And honestly, I didn't love it either. It's a thing that happened in the first issue of a Spider-Man book, and you're like, really? Like Spider-Man or Iron Man time traveled from 6 months in the future to make him Spider-Man? That's fucking weird. Like, you guys are not wrong.
Mhm.
But like, there's a sense of like there's an amount of time and stuff you should have been able to do that was stolen from you that really felt like it was a post-COVID response to me.
Sure.
That's a really
So
interesting read.
I
I had
kind of
not
think
picked
of
up
it
on
through
that.
that lens also. Of like
Yeah, I think that's a really good
what was
point.
taken from you, like what would you have had if this hadn't happened? Like how much better could the world have been potentially?
Again, but it's his life is pretty great, right? Like
I won't
Yeah, I
disagree
mean
with you on
that
that.
could be a really interesting like I think that's fantastic tension, because it's like, if you had been bitten by the spider, would you have your two kids? You know, would you be married to Mary Jane? You know, like that should be on the page. That should be there. Like
I
you know,
assume
like,
they're going
and
to
that
get
should
to
be
that
coming from.
if
I
he
hope
ever
so.
like confronts the maker. I'm sure that'll come up.
His life would
Yeah.
be so much worse actually.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Like, we know canonically his life would actually be pretty terrible. Like, yes, Aunt May would still be alive, but that would come at the cost of Uncle Ben. In
Yeah.
fact, I don't even know if Aunt May would still be alive, because, like, yeah, that was pretty touch and go
It
for a
depends on
while.
whether he makes that deal with the devil or not, right, Jado? So like
They've been
it's
killing
Oh.
Aunt May's left and right recently, so you got to watch out.
That is actually something that I had forgotten, was I had actually read Civil War as well. I think I deliberately like burned that out of my memory, because that's another example of Spider-Man just like when he is used as a plot device in other comics, Marvel comics, it's just dull. It just, they usually make the worst decisions for Spider-Man.
Yep.
And that was a great example. Anyway.
Yeah, agreed.
But yes, like I think you're absolutely right. Like that is such a good, like what have you lost? Well, I think we think that he actually hasn't lost a lot, but the world has lost a lot.
Yeah, I mean the world has lost Spider-Man, right?
And that is sort of like really because obviously one of the defining moments in the in the Bendis line, sorry, it was the quite dramatically when, due to various fallings out between the Ultimates and the Avengers, who gives a shit? Who does give a shit is that Spider-Man gets injured and then essentially is killed, saving everyone again from Goblin. And what we see after that is this outpouring of people sort of saying, you know, oh, if he hadn't been here, this would have happened. If he hadn't been here, this would have happened. And then this incredible moment of poor Miles Morales having to step into that role, having to pick up the legacy of Spider-Man, who is now considered to be a saint by the city, even though, when he was alive, they wouldn't necessarily have said that.
Did not like him at all.
Exactly. So, technically speaking, Peter would be dead at this point, right? Like he would have died when he was 16.
Yeah,
so he never would have made it to 35. But these aren't the same. Am I correct? Like there was Earth 1610 and this is Earth 6160.
Yeah, it's oh my god. So this is the superhero.
This is where it falls
comics of
apart,
it all.
right?
It's
Yeah.
So there was Ultimate Spider-Man parentheses 2000. That's in, I believe, 1610. And this one is actually like, I don't know the numbers. It's not the same universe, which is kind of wild because like the Maker, who is like the evil Reed Richards guy who's referenced at the start, like he's from the original Ultimate Universe. He goes out to find another universe, but he doesn't find the original Ultimate Universe. He finds this universe, and then does whatever he does to it, and then gets sealed away for like 18 months, and thus the like 1 month per issue timeline of this, where like by issue 18, the Maker will emerge again, and like kind of the thing is like have Iron Lad and the rest of the Ultimates created enough superheroes to like stop him or whatever. Again, what does stop him mean, Pat? I don't know. We'll find out together.
Can I just take a moment and talk about evil Reed Richards, the Maker? I don't know. I know very little about the character. I don't really want to know anything about him.
You don't need to. It's fine.
Good. Awesome. So the big deal is, as you were saying, that the Maker wanted to create a world where there were no heroes, right? And then
where he controls it, essentially, yes.
Iron Lad is going around and like reinstigating everyone's background by giving them, If that was the Maker's idea,
spiders.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, what was the Shocker's gauntlet supposed to go to if it wasn't just Shocker? I'm confused.
I was thinking about that the other day, and I don't know, and I decided I don't
Who was the man in the armchair? Okay, anyways.
I want to come back to Shocker. Can we put a pin in Shocker? Because I really want to talk about Shocker in a bit.
Tangents on tangents. I love it. If the Maker is all powerful and has been like, I don't know how he's like changing like reality or like the
travel through time, bro.
Okay, so you can do whatever he wants. Great. Why didn't he why didn't he kill Peter Parker? Why didn't he kill everyone before they became heroes? If they have time travel, like if you want a world with no heroes, don't just prevent them from becoming heroes. Prevent them, period. Like, what?
Yeah.
And I didn't read Ultimate Invasion, so I can't tell you what the plot device to stop that from happening was, but I'm sure there was one.
I'm just like, if you're going to set up the entire motivation of the series is he can control time and he twisted reality so that no one became heroes. Like, well, if he can do that, go like one tiny step further and actually prevent them.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Yep.
But okay, so I was in the back of my head while I'm reading this, like, why is this happening? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, Shocker. Let's do it.
Well, actually, this comes back to something Matt said, which is that they're going to stop the Maker. Okay, now, how do
you can't even stop the Shocker? I get your argument, John.
No, but how do the Iron Man and Thor or Iron Lad or whatever he calls himself now? How do they typically stop their opponents? Is they normally like
get blasted off the side of the roof and then do it again a second time? I don't know. With
Peter Parker or Spider-Man doesn't typically do that with his supervillains, right? Like, number one, Spider-Man famously does not use their mask names. He will always talk to them as the people that he knows they were. Like, that's always been like a great thing about Spider-Man. This is very similar, actually, Matt. I hope that we're picking up the same thing, but this is very similar to Batman in that Spider-Man very much is a believer in rehabilitation and helping. So will he necessarily join some coalition to murder some random person called the Maker that he doesn't necessarily know has done anything wrong? I don't know.
I mean, he
probably
does know
if it's an Ultimates.
Will he be up for murdering him? No. Like, you can already see him and Harry diverging on that point in this book with the Kingpin, right? Like,
exactly.
And so what does that look like when extrapolated to the guy who like literally reshaped the entire world? Like, he's still Spider-Man. Like, he's not going to murder that dude.
No, exactly right, and never would. He's going to try and connect with it. That's the thing. Spider-Man's greatest superpower is empathy, because he always tries to help and understand where the person has come from. Even in the films they were able to show that, which is that's such a core part of his identity. Except when it comes to Shocker, because there is a fantastic run in the Bendis universe where he stops Shocker again, because Shocker is kind of this pathetic supervillain who never seems to catch a break. Every time he's on the verge of succeeding, Spider-Man beats him up again. And there is
And it's also
a bit where
it's always a joke, right? Because like I'm setting you up for the turn because I
Exactly.
know what's here, but like it's always just like 2 pages within some larger story. It's just like, oh hey,
Exactly.
and then Spider-Man stopped the Shocker again because that guy's a joke.
he pulls down his pants in front of everyone. He does all sorts of things. And finally, Shocker captures Spider-Man and tortures him because he feels like Spider-Man has been bullying him. He feels like, we get to see it reframed from Shocker's perspective, where Spider-Man has essentially been bullying what is a fairly petty criminal for years. And you actually, this is where Peter Parker's empathy comes in. He actually realizes oh shit, this is somebody who I've done wrong to. Yes, he was a criminal, but did he deserve that kind of treatment? And so again, in that, that Peter Parker would never be on board with murdering somebody. But without I just don't know how they're going to get to that point with this Peter Parker. I think that a middle-aged Peter Parker could be very rich ground. So I am interested to see that this could build momentum, but it feels like middle-aged Peter Parker in this. I know we're saying middle-aged, but I'm actually older than him in the book, which so
I think it's
that's actually
32.
deeply upsetting. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all older than him then.
We're all getting old. But I mean, it could be very rich ground, but I just, it raises a lot of questions about how do we get to Miles Morales without Peter Parker dying, right? Because that is a fairly fulcrum event for Miles, because he has powers at that point and he doesn't step in to help Peter Parker at a crucial junction. And that leads to the death of Peter Parker. And that's not to say that Miles is responsible in any way, but how do we get to that if we, is Iron Lad sending out multiple vials of radioactive spiders?
How many spiders does he have?
John, you'll find this out when you continue on with this new Ultimate Universe, but there is no Miles Morales in this universe.
Wow.
Whoa,
Oh, good.
what?
No, good. That's so we've got middle-aged white guys,
because
and
the first crossover event between the main universe and this universe is Miles Morales ends up in the new Ultimate Universe. What? Whoa, coming this summer. It may have already started. I'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, so they do get Miles Morales.
They get
a different universe is Miles.
Current Marvel universe, but also former Ultimate Universe Miles Morales.
Oh, I hate comic books so much.
Comic books are so
Oh my
good,
God.
Pat. They're so good. Because Miles Morales gave the Molecule Man a hamburger. And so the Molecule Man was like, you can live in the new universe, son.
You are
Also a
you are
Jonathan
joking,
Hickman
right?
book.
Because I never finished reading the Ultimate Universe. I think I didn't end up finishing the Ultimate Spider-Man run, mostly because I was no longer able to get the comics. But you are joking about a hamburger being
The hamburger? No, Jono, I'm deadly serious, actually.
Oh wow! Was this wasn't Bendis writing that? This was like a crossover event.
Yeah, it was writer of this book, Jonathan Hickman, crossover event Secret Wars in 2015. And so the way Secret Wars starts is there's been years long build up at this point of the mainline Marvel universe interacting with other universes and in some instances having to blow them up so that the mainline Marvel universe didn't blow up. The way Secret Wars starts is that the mainline universe and the Ultimate Universe collide, and the Ultimate Universe does not win that fight, it turns out. So
I was willing to give Jonathan Hickman a chance, but now I am very, very, very angry that
but he saved Miles Morales. via
It's
a
comic
cheeseburger.
books.
So it's
What are you
good.
gonna do?
Hang on, now I'm googling it because I'm gonna put it in the chat. You guys talk amongst yourselves for a second.
Because that was always like something that the worst thing that happened in the Ultimate Comics, even with Bendis being so just really fantastic at writing Spider-Man. I mean, I genuinely think the Bendis Spider-Man voice was to me is the best of them. But there was so many times where the big events would intrude, like suddenly Manhattan would be flooded. And again, if you're only reading the Ultimate Spider-Man books, you don't understand the concept of why it suddenly,
Yeah.
oh my God, it literally is that there was a hamburger in his pocket.
Got it.
Okay. But I mean, to the point where even like Bendis
Shout out Stunned into
self-inserts.
silence.
There's even a couple of Bendis comics where he self-inserts and tells you that the reason that the story you're about to read is happening is because an executive at Marvel has told him that it would be a fun idea. And
If you're
that
talking
is-
about
that is
the
so
Wolverine
hilarious to me.
Spider-Man Freaky
Yes,
Friday
that is
swap,
exactly-
I maintain that that's Bendis still didn't want to do it. Then they were like, "You should do it," and he's like, "No, it's a bad idea." Like, I still think that idea started with him.
But he did the same with the Clone Saga. He talks about how it was kind of like it was almost like wasn't necessarily forced on him, because I'm sure that as much as we might joke about that being the case, like I'm sure that there was that's always part of a bigger discussion, but definitely the Marvel Ultimates would often and the Ultimate X-Men, I believe, would often force storylines that Spider-Man then had to be involved in, which
Yeah.
it sounds like this is
Well, this one's weird, right?
Hamburger in
Because
a
it's kind of
pocket.
the other way around, where like there's an establishing storyline to start, and then this like comes out of it. And like part of the thing I'm kind of curious about as we get, I think we're pretty close to issue 18 at this point. I don't know if we're at issue 18 in like the real time monthly issues, but like as we get closer to that like issue 18 cutoff point where like the Maker emerges, like what happens there? Like how does that shape the stories that are happening in the universe? Like, is Ultimate Spider-Man going to become unrecognizable at that point because it's folded into this
Yes.
weird, hey, we have to go kill the Maker plot? Like, I don't know.
That's
It'd be interesting to see.
that has been the through line for Ultimate Comics Spider-Man. Every time there is some major event, it is like it is to the detriment of and like when Spider-Man is just treated as a plot device in other things, it usually, yeah. I mean and I'm basing that on reading Ultimate Comics and when there would be this big event, and suddenly, like I said, suddenly Manhattan is flooded, bizarrely, and Spider-Man is having to save people from the water, but there's no like logical reason why Manhattan is suddenly flooded.
Yeah,
And
it just
turns out
happens,
it's because,
right?
yeah, exactly. So I think that's going to be. Sorry, I'm reading these comments on this Reddit post that you linked, and
Very funny.
the top comment is, the best part is how this ends up being important to the plot, and the burger helps save the multiverse. And the OP, which I believe is the opening poster, has replied
Yep.
to this saying, I think the burger just helped to save Miles, because when the Secret Wars ended and the multiverse was rebuilt by Molecule Man, he saved Miles and put him in the 616 instead of his natal 1610. But anyway, the burger, it is important to the plot, that for sure. And I think that is a perfect encapsulation of comic book logic.
Yeah, that's superhero comics, baby.
That is superhero comic. You know, this is the first time I think we've done a. No, actually, that's not true, because we did Wonder Woman. But I was going to say this is like the first time we've done a more traditional superhero comic discussion. The three of us. I know that the podcast frequently has them, and they're great. But I think I'm definitely one of the few who doesn't regularly read the superhero comics for these ones. So
sorry, Joe.
yeah, no. Look, I love Spider-Man, and so this was definitely a challenging one. I still think that the best Spider-Man beyond Bendis is the 2-page Kate Beaton comic where he Spider-Man is sick of Kraven the Hunter constantly chasing him, so he invites Kraven the Hunter to prom. And Kraven then goes on the hunt for the best prom date. and then Craven takes the prom date to the prom, and they have a magical time. And the last panel is just Spider-Man sitting in a web hammock, which is actually a really nice little moment in the Ultimate comic where he is waiting on a stakeout, and it turns out that things do not happen very quickly in
Yep.
stakeouts.
Eating some donuts.
Yeah.
I
Just
found
eating
the comment
donuts.
to put in the chat, by the way.
Really sad that Harker Vagrant ended. That was very, very good. Even had some great X-Men comics. But yeah, so I like to come back to Ultimate Comic Spider-Man. I do think the J. Jonah Jameson and Ben Parker storyline could be quite interesting, because I think and you've obviously read further into it, Matt. Does it turn on Spider-Man? Are they suddenly like, oh, this is a menace to society?
Oh, no, they don't care about Spider-Man at all. They think Spider-Man is like a distraction from the real story, which is like, hey, there are shadowy players like controlling the entirety of New York, and there's shadowy players controlling that guy that controls the entirety of New York. Like, we don't care
Ooh.
about Spider-Man.
So that is quite a significant departure from, I guess, known Spider-Man canon, which would almost be interesting enough for me to keep reading this, because, like I said, one of my big fears is that we're just going to get the same storylines, just kind of microwaved and slightly different. Because I kind of felt like I'm probably getting the character wrong, but is it Bullseye that they face?
Yeah. Yep. You're right.
Yeah. Who's throwing playing cards? Is that a classic Bullseye thing? I thought that was Gambit who used playing cards.
It's not a Bullseye thing.
Okay, cool. Because when Bullseye came around, I was just like, oh, good, he's just going to be an assassin for hire kind of thing. But then, am I right that Goblin tortures him to death?
I don't know about to death,
Not
but
to death.
definitely tortures. Yes.
Yeah.
But so what you're saying, Pat, is that somewhere there is just like a holding cell where Bullseye is?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes or no?
Okay.
It's unclear at the end of this volume.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
'cause
sure he could break out, I'm sure. Right?
Okay, so Matt, what you're saying is Bullseye does return.
That's an interesting question that I'm not sure I want to talk about, but we'll see.
I mean, they were
Yeah,
hinting
I
at
don't think
something like, oh, when our leader lost his eye, all of his followers also plucked out their eye. That's how badass we are. That's what you're dealing with. So there's something there.
Yeah, I mean, nothing says badass like just spoiling your depth perception.
That's
Like,
right.
Yeah, just like ripping your eye out, and still
Yeah.
somehow you could throw playing cards like the best of them, right?
That's how
Yep.
talented he
Yep.
is. Yeah. So there's something there. They're setting something up.
So yeah, there's
There.
definitely something being set up there. And obviously we didn't even mention that Daredevil makes an appearance in this.
Yeah.
Also not a
He's a
superhero.
priest. Yeah.
Yeah, Catholic priest, I believe. Which I think does that match up? Because
Yeah.
I've not read a lot of
Yeah.
Daredevil, but Daredevil is like probably to me is another interesting character purely because very street level, a bit more relatable than the billionaire who flies around with a nuclear bomb in his heart.
Yeah. Daredevil definitely got that Catholic guilt. He is Catholic through and through, so this
It's
all
a through
tracks.
line. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, definitely Spider-Man Catholicism. I think there's definitely something there as well in terms of the.
Yeah, I was going to mention that earlier.
realizing of
Like,
guilt. Yeah.
Cal and I were talking about that for one of the Power Fantasy chats, actually, where like there's so much of the like weird Catholic guilt stuff just like wrapped up in superheroes as a whole, but definitely Spider-Man of like,
Yep.
I am
Yep.
doing my best and my best is never good enough. Like that's Catholic guilt through and through.
Definitely, there is a trans sort of substantiation of guilt into action, right? Like that is definitely the motivating force. As I've said, like the saddest moment is when he's dying in Aunt May's arms, and all he says is, "Oh, I finally saved everyone," and you're like, "Ooh, that's a very depressing line to go out on."
Yeah, my bud, like, oh, that's what we're fixated on. But like, that's kind of why this is interesting to me. Of like having a Spider-Man who's not entirely in that mode, like where it's not guilt driving him so much as purpose. Like, I don't know. I didn't have as much trouble with that as you guys did for that reason. But like, I get at the same time, I get where you're coming from. Like, I get it. So like, it's interesting to think about. I will take that away from it and probably think about that the next time I reread it when I get to volume 3, because volume 1 and 2 are out in trades, and volume 3 I think is still ongoing in monthly issues. It's probably pretty close.
Well, they took
at this
away the
point.
death of Uncle Ben as the motivator and didn't really give us a replacement in this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. Because Aunt May is dead, but she is dead completely in
And
a.
Peter doesn't seem like he's sad about it, but not like it's
Yeah,
not.
he's gone through the grief journey in a pretty healthy way, it seems.
Yeah.
It's a Jonathan
Yeah.
Hickman comic. People don't express emotions that well.
Yeah,
Or they do it, but they do it very stoically.
Yeah, we were told Uncle Ben cried, but we didn't see it. But we were told that he cried.
Oh,
Uncle Ben
no,
is
no,
very
there's
much like a
definitely-
manly man in this book.
There is definitely a panel where a tear runs down his face as he's looking up at the
At the
memorial. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
you got me.
Like 90% sure we actually
Cross
see a single tear run down his face. Yep, a single tear. Yep, we got a single tear. But so can we talk about there's two scenes. Number one, ice cream. When he is eating ice cream after a fight, and his daughter walks in and finds out that he is Spider-Man. Now,
Mhm.
number one, is that not just terribly, terribly, terribly careless?
Yes.
And number two, if you have a nanite suit that can become anything, would you not just turn it into normal clothes as soon as you get home?
As soon as you got home, yeah, you would think, right?
Yeah.
He's a little distracted by
Ice
failing
cream.
to stop the shocker again.
By failing to stop the shocker, yeah. Yep. And number two, when his daughter blurts out that he is a superhero, and his wife and son take it pretty casually.
In stride, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, do we think that sets up interesting tension, or do we think that kind of closes those avenues off for exploration? I don't know, Matt. You've read further on. Does
Yeah, I was gonna say I
is there
have
more of
advanced
that?
knowledge. I don't think it closes off the tension. I will tell you that. Do I
Okay.
think it's
Okay,
entirely
no.
realistic? No, I do not. The fact there's a very understanding wife, I guess, is what I will say before I let Pat talk.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier. It's like he is, by doing this, his family is in danger. If he doesn't have a problem with it, Mary Jane should really have a problem with it. And
Yeah.
it's just like all the chances to actually have consequences or stakes in this just seems to be glanced over for presumably this overarching, the makers are coming, we got to prepare.
I don't even know if I agree with you that like she should be unhappy with it, because I feel like that would be tropey and dumb. But like the fact that
I don't want her to be
there's
unhappy. I just need a conversation about.
there's no
just point
yelling,
it out.
right? There's
Yeah, just
no
like-
yelling at all, and that's wild to me in a way that's
Well-
like, again, to me very Hickman, of like everyone's very stoic and like processing their emotions very calmly. Like that's very much the mode that Hickman characters operate in. I feel like where they're like all very like, even when they're having feelings, they're having them very calmly and stating them very like matter of factly.
Okay, so yes, that does seem to be the case. It seems very, very calm for what is an insane thing happening, especially if, as we're given to understand, this is some kind of fascist state. So, I mean, growing up in Zimbabwe, like you were encouraged by your parents to not even joke about the government at home because somebody might hear and that could be problematic.
Yeah.
So, I would imagine in a sort of place like New York, where if it is a fascist state or whatever, however it's being run, you would be very concerned that your husband is apparently going out and fighting the fascists. Like you'd be very proud of him, I'm sure. Like great, but some part of that would be concern. The other thing is that this is framed as, it's kind of the story framing is obviously Peter comes home and he's got a huge black eye and he's got cuts all over his face. May blurts out that he's a superhero, and Mary Jane goes, "How exactly did you get that black eye?" And with the kid still sitting there, he proceeds we're given to understand to explain that he and another figure in a green suit broke into Wilson Fisk's
The man
penthouse.
who is in charge of and runs. Yeah.
And then tell them, like, oh, and it turned out to be a trap, like really dangerous. He then threw a table at us. He hit my friend so hard that it broke his iron helm, and we barely got out of there with our lives. Which is how we're given to understand how he tells them, because he said, and that is the story of how your dad got his butt kicked. That would be enough for her to be like, you need to stop doing this like today, and we need to figure this out, because what you've just described is not only were you like in danger, but you were also ineffectual.
It's not going great.
It's not going great. And also his kid says, isn't that against the law? And he said, yes, exactly. I've been saying that.
Jono, Mary Jane said, "Go get him, Tiger." That's all he. I mean, she approved this from the beginning. Come on.
She knew exactly what was going to do what she said.
When she says, "Go get him, Tiger," she knows what she's talking about.
I'm just
I will
hearing
say
you guys
this.
say that you don't want Spider-Man to be Spider-Man. You just don't want Spider-Man
I want
to exist. It's
Spider-Man
fine.
as Spider-Man because of what he went through to become Spider-Man.
Yeah, he chose to get bitten by
No!
that spider that Iron Lad gave him from 6 months in the future. We're saying the same thing,
The lesson
Pat.
of the Spideyverse is that it doesn't matter how many different versions of Spider-Man there are, they all choose to do the right thing. They are given powers through different means, but they all choose to do the right thing. This Spider-Man is kind of just handed everything on a golden platter. And the fact that the last panel is your Spider-Man, it made me irrationally angry with this book, because it feels like it didn't earn that moment. It feels like there was a lot of
No.
setup and there wasn't a lot of payoff. And I understand, I have to give this book grace because it is the first in what will be a continuing series. But I feel like you need to do more work than that to earn that. Does that
Is
make
it-
sense?
Is it not peak Spider-Man to just fucking fail though, Jono? Like to just
Yes,
go
it-
get your ass like handed to you.
Absolutely. And then he has to hide the fact that he has a black eye because he can't let his family know, because he can't let them know so that they'll be in danger. He can't let his daughter know so that she doesn't blurt it out in school.
I mean, they're
when,
in danger
you know-
either way, right? Like, I don't know. I kind of find it mildly refreshing of like, yeah, I'm just gonna talk to these people because they're my family, and why would I keep secrets from them? Like,
But they're children, Matthew. They're
You
children.
don't tell your kids that you don't tell your kids that there are dangerous men out there that want your dad dead.
I mean, it's the truth though, Jono. I don't know.
Great. Awesome.
I mean, look, as a kid, I will never forget. It was a Friday morning, and I was supposed to go to school that day. And my dad came through and said, "Hey, we're actually going to go somewhere else today," and we did. And we spent that weekend staying somewhere else. And when we got back, the house had been ransacked, and my parents never really talked about it. And then later that same year, it was the last day of school. My mom came and picked me up, and she dropped me off at a friend's house where I stayed because my dad had been arrested. And the government had actually been trying to arrest him for a while because they were trying to buy his bank and he didn't want to sell it. As a kid, I didn't understand a lot of that. And I'm kind of glad that my parents didn't try to explain it to me. It was just kind of like, we're just going to remove you from the scene and things like that. If my dad had come home and been like, yeah, no, I just got into a big fight with, with the president and I lost, kicked my ass, I think I probably would have been more scared than I was of just our house kind of being ransacked by the police. Like,
It is
that
kind
was-
of what parents are supposed to do, right? To like shelter the kids from.
it's it's about having the conversation at the appropriate time. Like, he could have maybe talked to his son with Mary Jane separately, and with the daughter, it's like, hey, dad has a secret. And it's really, we need to talk about when it's appropriate to keep secrets, because obviously you don't want to teach your kids that it's okay to lie and things like that. But you do want them to know that, sometimes as a family, you'll have private business that you don't necessarily want spread around, and it can be any number of things. The fact that you're Spider-Man and that you're going out and fighting is probably something that you like. Definitely a conversation you should have had with May well in advance of her blurting it out to the entire family.
Yep. And it is weird that they're just like removing this once, like it is a juicy source of tension that they're like, no, we don't want that. Don't eat it. Don't worry about it. They're all good with it. Awesome. Well, show me some sort of tension then. Like what's why is he doing what he's doing?
Yeah. Sorry, Matt. That was quite a reaction to what you said.
I mean, it is a real reaction, and it is a thing that happened to you. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to argue with that. That's for sure. But like,
no, I'm just giving you an example of my own lived experience of that sort of thing. I mean, all of us have family business that doesn't necessarily need to be, shared far and wide. The fact that your dad is Spider-Man should definitely be under that sort of like, hey, this is something that we don't just blurt out. Because if she does it in the kitchen with the family, there's no telling. I don't know if these kids go to school. We actually do get we do have a little bit of kind of like, again, an issue of like, we don't actually see these guys interacting with their kids a lot outside of kind of like briefly taking her web swinging and taking them to the memorial. There's not like a lot of like family time where we see them out and about, which again could be because it's not safe outside, or it could be that they're just not the best parents.
There's a lot of weird, unrealistic stuff about their lives, like you pointed out earlier, Jono. Like, it's a photojournalist and a person who just started up their own marketing company. They have what looks like a pretty posh apartment in New York and 2 kids, and they're not just like they don't
drowning
seem like
in
they're
debt,
strapped, right? Like, yeah. So,
yep. I mean, and the other side of it as well is like Peter probably shouldn't take down Kingpin because then he will be unemployed.
Because a lot of businesses in New York, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing there's not going to be a lot of money for the Bugle if its main financier ends up in jail.
Well, he can just work at the paper.
The paper.
Yes, of course, the paper. Yep, the digital only.
Ad revenue is going to be.
Oh my god!
Astonishing. A different world, Pat. Could work.
Oh god.
I do wonder if they are not allowed to actually openly criticize print media because ultimately comics are printed.
Oh, you mean no, I think it's just that comics writers in general like print media and wish it still existed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm all for it. But I mean, it is at least very realistic that a billionaire would buy a paper and then not allow said paper to print stories. I've never heard of a case of it happening in the real world, but I'm sure it would.
In this evil mirror universe.
Yeah, exactly. The only billionaires in America are benevolent, so they would never do that.
Jono, no, right. Don't rope me into this discussion.
But it was quite interesting that we sort of discussed about how there's no clear signs that this is a sort of fascist dystopia, if it is. And then, we proceeded to list things that are happening in the real world as examples of that. And they just weren't any of those in this comic books. Where it was almost like it wouldn't be the worst America to live in. It doesn't sound like immigrants are being illegally detained.
Yeah.
Better, who knows?
Which side of the ICE riots do you think Spider-Man and Iron Man would be on? Because I'm willing to bet they would be on opposite sides.
Ooh, it depends on. I mean, we know which side Spider-Man would be on at all times, right? Like, it depends on the Iron Man writer, honestly.
We can cut that bit out. I don't want you guys to go to jail.
I still think this is where I'm at, kind of like the same sort of thing of like Peter taking the spider. It's like I went out and protested last weekend. Pat, you went out and protested last weekend. It's like. Well, I don't know. If someone's gonna come for me over me saying Spider-Man would be on the correct side of an ICE protest, like, come at me, man. I'm done. Like, let's do it.
Yeah. No, I think that's and I think that is how we relate to these superheroes as well, right? Is like we recognize how, like, we can immediately recognize how Spider-Man would react in a situation like that, and it certainly wouldn't be webbing up protesters and saying, "Hey, respect the law," because there was like an interesting through line. When the Spider-Man video game came out a few years back, where they were like, Spider-Man seems awfully chummy with the police. And it's like, well, I mean,
actually,
yeah, right. And it's like, well, I mean, he's going to work with the authorities when it makes sense to do so. But that does not mean that he's always on their side. Like, like it's not like Spider-Man's going to help them arrest somebody who's doing, some like bootlegging CDs or something like that. But if it's somebody who presents a threat to the community, then it makes sense to work within a legal framework that will see that person put away. I mean, he does that with Kingpin, and Kingpin doesn't stay put away, but he does get put away.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, because Batman does the same thing, right? Like, Batman works with the police because he wants to see the villains go to Arkham or wherever they need to go, so that they can presumably be rehabilitated. Which I think both Batman and Spider-Man believe quite heavily in rehabilitation. I don't get that from other superheroes, and I don't get that sense from this Spider-Man, and that might be because there's no police force in this Spider-Man. We don't see a single police officer or firefighter. Some of the what I would consider to be the ordinary heroes of New York. The sort of the beat cop or the firefighter, things like that. So maybe that is again because the Maker has eliminated all of that. I don't know. Did he stop people becoming police officers and stuff like that?
No heroes.
No heroes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. And like, again, we see it is very slow, I guess is what I would like. One of the criticisms I would give this book is like, it does take a very long time for us to get to
Just want a little
Kingpin
dystopia.
confrontation. Yeah.
Just a little dystopia. Just a little
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like, just give us a slightly like all we would need to do would be to see, like at the memorial, maybe May points at one of the police officers and they're wearing a uniform that is distinctly not the kind of more friendly police. I mean, Jesus, I'm saying friendly police officer. I guess I don't have the same kind of relationship with policing
Jono.
as Americans have, but I mean, like, all you would need is like May doing that, and then Mary Jane being like, "No, we don't point at them." Just some of that. Like I said, like growing up in Zimbabwe, like some of that kind of like, oh no, just like that. It's that quiet directing you away from the behavior that could get you noticed by the authorities. It's that, oh no, sweetie, we don't point at the police officers. They don't like it when you do that. Something like that would be so much more effective at telling me like, oh, something's wrong here. Like something's unsettling here when that's the reaction. They're not being told, if you get lost in the crowd, find a policeman and let them know and they'll help you. It's just like that thing of just like, they're not here to help us. They're here to watch over us for any dissent or anything like that. Like, just give me something like that. Give me something I can hold on to for understanding that this world is not a place where somebody like Spider-Man could exist.
Yeah. Anything that's not just, oh, look, the bad guy is bad, and you're just saying it. Like anything that's actually off kilter or upsetting.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, like it sounds like there is momentum in later volumes. So I don't know. Do they explore? Like, does Spider-Man team up with the police to try and do anything in any of this?
I don't believe there are any police that I've seen at this point. And like at the same time, I think the thing you guys are saying about like this world doesn't seem that bad given everything, right? Like, I think from what I've read that's still kind of the case. Like, it's still just kind of like the Kingpin is bad. Why is he bad? Well, he's bad. Like, I would say that's a valid criticism to level at the book, honestly. Even going forward.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's that does come back to this idea of kind of like, because that is sort of like one of the character of New York in the films. Certainly, you'll see Spider-Man swinging between the skyscrapers. You'll see the police officer kind of like holding onto his cap and watching as Spider-Man swings past and things like that. That's always sort of like in my mind, as that's indelible to the texture of a Spider-Man story. Is New York is a little bit dirty, it's a little bit unsafe, but there's a lot of people that are working together to try and make it a better place. And Spider-Man is just one of those people. Whereas, as you said, yeah, this is just kind of like there's none of those people. Harry Osborn is flying around and throwing bombs to try and make it a safer place. And the Kingpin is evil because he owns a newspaper. And allegedly, I mean, I don't even think he wasn't even responsible for the building being destroyed, was he? The laser
No.
strike? No,
No.
so I mean, yeah, he has an assassin as a bodyguard, but that doesn't make you a criminal.
Well, it might, but
No,
I
because
get
like
what you're
it
saying.
literally, but literally, like bombs are being thrown at him. It would make sense to hire better security. He's hired, I don't know, assassins are us, and admittedly, the bodyguard is Bullseye, which famously is an actual assassin. But yeah, what is Kingpin's crime? Like, what's the charge? Being a billionaire, a giant billionaire. That's not the. It's not Democracy Manifest.
Not illegal yet.
Yeah, exactly. It's so yeah. I guess it's if we compare this to Ultimate Spider-Man, which is an unfair comparison to make, because that one, if we were just comparing Volume 1 of this to Volume 1 of that, it would be maybe a slightly more fair kind of apples with apples. But Ultimate Spider-Man parentheses 2000. We had this very rich texture of a Spider-Man who had to learn about the real world, about how systemic evil exists, and about how the way to combat that is not simply punching somebody, but it's by supporting your community. It's by working within legal frameworks and strengthening legal frameworks, all of that sort of stuff. And this one just kind of feels like, yeah, just put on your mask and go out and punch someone.
Because Harry told you to.
Because Harry told you to.
That's interesting because, like, I think, again, this is not a thing we've really been shown, but I've kind of been assuming, like, those additional frameworks don't exist. So that's one point.
Mhm.
B, like, this Peter, as a result of that, and as a result of, like, coming to this so late, I don't know, that's maybe not a fair comparison, but, like, it's kind of just like, oh yeah, I'm way behind, man. I gotta start punching some people now, because I should have been punching people 20 years ago. So I don't know, it's interesting to think about, but, like, yeah, I agree with you a little bit that, like, he does seem to have just kind of taken off and, like, decided what to do, and it's like, well, wait, hold on there. Is this actually going to accomplish what we want it to accomplish? And, like, teenage Peter Parker kind of doing that makes sense. Like, quote unquote middle-aged Peter Parker, maybe not.
We
so much.
almost
I don't know.
expect that he should know better. Yeah. Sorry, Patrick's just posted a panel from it.
It's the motivation right there at this panel.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense for Harry. Like, I feel like
there's a lot of ifs and maybes situation in that.
Yeah. It feels like Harry Osborn's motivation is at least clearer to me because we get to see some of his history and we get to see the why of, like when he's first bombing Kingpin, you're not given that context, but that's fine because from previous readings of Spider-Man that the Green Goblin is a bad guy. Bad guys fight each other. It's pretty common. Then we're given a little bit more information and we know, okay, so this version of Harry isn't evil. He actually has a thread that he's trying to follow. And presumably he knows that the existing framework, because he seems to know about this let's call it a fiefdom that the Kingpin occupies. So, he has determined that the way to do this is to he's not necessarily attacking the Kingpin to kill him. He's attacking him to show weakness so that the Kingpin is then replaced, presumably, or is toppled. Because there does seem to be, am I forgetting, is there a moment when the Kingpin is visited by somebody from the actual thing?
Yeah,
and
he's visited by a higher up at some point in this volume, I believe.
Yeah. So Harry and the Kingpin's interaction makes perfect sense. But this is a Spider-Man story. And yeah, we don't get that motivation. For Peter, it's just like, yeah, I didn't stop this guy called the Shocker, but then I met Harry. And now we're fighting the Kingpin.
And he says there's evil people. And I want to be a hero because heroes fight bad guys.
To be fair, they're not much better at fighting the Kingpin than fighting the Shocker.
True.
Yeah, Iron Man Force Ghost appears, tells him that his destiny is to be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It is a
That's all it
then-
takes.
a bonkers origin story to tell anyone, right? So like this is part of what I was like, I wonder if we'll be able to get through this part or not. Like when I suggested we read this, because I thought again we would have interesting things to say about it, and 2 hours later, I think I would prove it right. But like there is such a wild amount of like, oh yeah, how does Ultimate Spider-Man parentheses 2024 start? Well, Iron Lad, who's actually Iron Man, shows up from 6 months in the future as a hologram, and like it's such a wild issue 1 of a comic book. It doesn't really make any sense at all, and I don't know. It's like some part of it I think is supposed to be talking to the people who read Ultimate Spider-Man as like teenagers or like young 20 somethings or something like that. But like at the same time, it's very much a you've been in like superhero comic books your whole life sort of deal at the same time. So I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird positioning
I think
for a
so,
book called
and I think
Ultimate Spider-Man.
yeah, it's definitely look. You don't get to call your comic book series Ultimate Spider-Man and then not have to contend with the fact that we had an Ultimate Spider-Man. Like
Yeah.
it's, I think that's as much as I want to offer space to admit that this is the start of something, and so therefore cannot be held to the same yardstick. It is still like I
I
am
mean,
not the
they're
one who
asking
chose the
you
name.
to, right? Like they put
Exactly.
the title on there. It's not your fault.
Exactly. And so, when you give me a Peter Parker who seems directionless and who just kind of like stumbles into being Spider-Man because a hologram of Iron Lad tells him that he was always destined to be a hero. And then you give me villains who don't have any of the traditional, I guess, motivations that we see in Spider-Man. I don't get any tragic backstory from Kingpin. I don't get any motivation for Kingpin to be Kingpin other than he's already the Kingpin. He's established as a villain, even though we're not given any of that establishment. We do get some interesting backstory via Harry about how Harry became the Green Goblin and how it's actually based on Iron Man armor and stuff, and that's actually pretty cool. But like again, like the tragedy of Harry is at least there. Like at least we get to see a little bit of that where he's on his way to see his father. His father just tells him that he's disappointed because his son is just again failing to show up. And Harry's tragedy is that he's never able to prove his father wrong because shortly after his father tells him that, his father is killed. And so then Harry now shows up as the Green Goblin, consistently trying to stop the person that he believes has his father's blood in his hands. That's a more interesting origin story than what we get for the main character, allegedly, of this book.
Yeah, I agree that I think I find Harry like slightly more compelling than Peter, honestly. Ultimate Green Goblin, we should have called this book.
Yeah, I mean, even if Harry is the one who somehow, like, if he goes into the Iron Man vault, finds the spider, and the spider gets out and bites him, and he becomes Spider-Man,
Ooh.
I would find that more interesting than what we get for Spider-Man. At least that would make more sense to me than just like a vial with a poisonous spider being sent backwards in time with a nanite suit.
That's interesting. We might check back in on this series later on. I'll keep reading and I'll report back. But I think we probably should leave it there because we're about 2 hours in.
Yeah. I definitely I think I covered off most of my notes. I guess there was one little point that I had with, I think we kind of touched on it briefly, is that like Spider-Man is like this mythic figure, right? Like in terms of there can be lots of different versions of him or her, and the person under the mask is almost less important than the decisions that they make. But if Peter is one version of the Spider-Man myth in Ultimate Comics (parentheses 2000), and that version of him is kind of like the myth of sacrifice and of what version of the myth is this Peter Parker in Ultimate Comics (parentheses 2024)? What is this what vehicle is this Peter for? What stories is he telling us? That was a bonus sort of little point I'd made for myself. you know, Miles kind of extended the myth of Spider-Man and was got to tell his own version of that story. What version of Spider-Man is Jonathan Hickman giving us?
Yeah, I mean, I would say might be too early to tell, first off. And then
Which is fair. Yeah.
second, I don't know. I do keep coming back around to like I think the most consequential thing in regards to that question is the discussion we already had of like having the power like forced upon you and then what do you do with it versus like the choice to actually become a hero, which I know that we've kind of like laughed at a little bit throughout this stuff because like what has he actually done up to this point? Mostly failed to stop people, but like I don't know. I think there's something to that where it's like again, assuming this world is oppressed and you're given the choice to do something about it, like do you or not? I think that's something. Like I think there's actually something there. Like regardless of some of the critiques of it that you guys have pointed out, like I think that that is a potentially compelling version of it. Though again, I would say let's give it some time, see how it plays out. I don't know.
I think that's a very fair read. I did start this by saying I wanted to have space for this to grow, and not be like a foaming at the mouth gatekeeper because like my
This isn't
ideal
my
of Spider-Man
Spider-Man.
is just mine. Exactly. But I and I do think that like I think that there's some very interesting threads that we're presented with. I think as a first volume, maybe it would not have won me over to continue reading it as the Bendis one did. But the Bendis one also had the advantage of when I started reading it, there was already 9 years worth of comic books there to enjoy. So, again, it's not really fair to judge this solely by the output of a year and a half.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna keep reading it because I like it, and I will let you guys like if I'm like I feel like it has sufficiently responded to some of the points we made here. We might circle back because I'm interested, and if it hasn't, we'll just let it fade off into the sunset and never talk about it again.
I love that.
All right, boys, it's recommendations time. Assuming someone liked or is interested in things similar to this, but possibly better, what would you recommend to them? I can go first.
Do you want to go first there, Pat or Matt? Yeah.
I can go
Go
first.
for Matt. Yeah.
So like kind of in a similar vein, the DC version of like launching an Ultimate line was like they did an Absolute line starting last year, and so like it's retooled versions of a lot of the core DC heroes and like set in a world that's more quote unquote our world, like it's a little bit more systemic evil and stuff. And like I think if you're reading Ultimate Spider-Man, I think the best one of those to read is Absolute Batman. It's kind of like Buck Wild, so there's that. But yeah, like if you enjoy the tone of this but want it to be more action packed and possibly more compelling, actually, like I think Absolute Batman's where I would throw you. I do also think that I would recommend Ultimates if you like this universe specifically and want to read more of it. I think that's probably, from what I've read of it at least, the like actual best Ultimate line book. So I would say Ultimates is where the parentheses 2025, I think. No, 2024, because it's on like issue 12 or something now. So Ultimates parentheses 2024.
I'm also very glad that you also drew the same conclusion that the best superhero or hero from DC is Batman, and obviously is the amalgam or analog to Spider-Man.
I think it has the most similar energy, actually. Like of the Absolute line, like the Batman book is weird in that like if it wasn't the exact meshing of writer and artist that it is, such that like Scott Snyder's over the top writing works with Nick Dragatta's art, like there's a world where that book doesn't work and it's just bad, but it's actually good because they just like they work so well together. But anyways, that's a different podcast.
Is this the big Batman?
Yeah. Big bulky
Okay.
Batman.
That logo is just ridiculous.
It's awesome.
It's a rectangle. I can do mine real quick. It's Miles Morales as the main character, not Peter, but Peter's in there, and it's a whole alternate
Mhm.
reality, multiple dimensions. So if you like this and you haven't watched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, check it out. I haven't seen, what is it, Across the Spider-Verse or whatever the sequel is. I haven't watched that one yet, but I heard it was good. So check it out.
Yeah, no, I think that would certainly be a recommendation that I would make as well. I think the animation is just gorgeous, and again, like manages to tell a very personal and sweet story in like a pretty condensed runtime. Like, you know,
Mhm.
a real accomplishment, I think.
And all the characters have motivations for what they're doing. Crazy.
All right, so my recommendations: if you want a kind of an alternative what if history, I would say Philip K. Dick's The Man in the High Castle is a very, very good idea of a what if story, particularly around America and American history. So you know that's it's not superhero related, but in terms of being kind of like a really interesting alternative take on what could have been, I think that is a seminal piece of work in that space. If you liked this book, I would probably echo Matt that Ultimates is quite a cool retelling of how the Avengers come to be. They're not even called the Avengers in that; they're called the Ultimates. But I think it deals quite ham-fistedly with some fairly serious topics like domestic violence and things like that. So do be aware. But in terms of being like a retelling with key differences, that's definitely one that I would say matches this if you liked Ultimate Spider-Man parentheses 2024. I would also really, I mean, look, if you are if you're listening to this podcast and you've somehow made it to the end of what poor Pat is going to have to try and edit down, and you're like, wow, I'm really interested in Spider-Man, and you have not read Ultimate Spider-Man by Michael Bendis, that is like without a doubt the best Spider-Man to read, hands down. There's a reason it was so successful. There's a reason that it went on for so long. It has lots of flaws that we've probably glossed over, but it is honestly, it has the purest Peter Parker voice I think that I've ever seen in any media. And also does a great job at introducing Miles Morales as a character in their own right, and is really, really fantastic for that. And then I guess in other media, if you want more Spider-Man, the video games are very good. The Spider-Man, I think it was 2018 or 2019, and then they did another one 2023, Spider-Man 2. Those are very good. I would have no hesitation in recommending those. I would have also no hesitation in recommending Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse. I think that a lot of what we've touched on here about what makes Spider-Man inherently Spider-Man is a lot of the tension that those films kind of deal with, which is great. Just there is just that fantastic scene of Miles on the other side of the door while his dad gives him all of it, like just really seminal Spider-Man kind of beautiful stuff. And then I think in terms of TV, I think the animated series probably hasn't aged well in terms of the animation and stuff, but I think it was hailed as sort of some of the best Spider-Man in animation, and also was where we were introduced to the concept of the Spider-Verse in that they had Peter Parker team up with multiple versions of himself to fight a Peter Parker who is infected with Carnage, thanks to Madam Web, which is a Spider-Man film I would not recommend.
I was going to say
because it's well, actually no, you know what? I would watch it purely for the experience, but I have not seen it, so therefore would not recommend it. Because everything that I've recommended, I've either watched or read. So yeah, those would be my recommendations.
I'm gonna circle back quick because I have a recommendation specifically for you, Jono, because you've talked so much about like how your Spider-Man is like very empathetic, and I'm posting in the chat here the last issue of Chip Zdarsky's like spectacular Spider-Man run is one that he wrote and drew, and it's very much just like focused on like everyday Spider-Man stuff. Like he helps a kid do math, he talks to a hot dog vendor, like there's so much like cool stuff in there, and it's like a documentary crew trying to like make a film about Spider-Man. So like it's very good. It's like one of my favorite Spider-Man issues. So I would say I would throw that into the mix also. Spectacular
Ah.
Spider-Man number 310 by Chip
I will-
Zdarsky is a book
I'll-
that you should check out.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely do that. As I've said, some of my favorite Spider-Man moments are less when he is, punching Vulture, and more when he is like just being there for somebody is incredibly valuable. I think somebody whose work I'm a fan of, not necessarily as a comic book writer, but is Scott Aukerman. He apparently has written a couple of things of Spider-Man. And in more recent issues, one of the comedians who I really like, Jason Mantzoukas, is apparently doing a podcast with J. Jonah Jameson in the In-Universe, which I think is kind of delightful, given their history. But yeah, that's very cool. I don't know if you've read any of those.
No, I mean I don't think I've read any of the. I knew that Aukerman had done some Spider-Man stuff. I did not know that there's a Jason Mantzoukas, J. Jonah Jameson-esque podcast going
apparently
on.
so.
I'm gonna go
Yeah.
hunt for that.
I think in world, so I don't think that there's any episodes. As much as I would pay money to hear that, I don't think that they've got any like transmedia where Jason Mantzoukas
it
literally
doesn't
does
actually
it.
exist.
No,
Oh,
it's just in. Yeah, I know. Like, right? How excited you got for that is
I was
exactly how
really
excited I got
excited
for that.
about it.
Yeah.
All right, boys. I think that will do it for this month's discussion of Ultimate Spider-Man. As always, if you want to get in touch with Pat or myself, you can email us at waitingonthetrade@gmail.com, and you can find more comics-related goodness at mattreadscomics.com. Jono, this was delightful. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about Spider-Man with us. It was everything I hoped for and more, honestly.
I look like genuinely. I probably could have kept going for another hour. I'm very sorry. I'm also very sorry to Pat, who had to both sit through this and will have to sit through the edit. Prayers for Pat, really.
It was great.
He's just happy to have someone who agreed with him for once again.
It's nice to be on the side that has more people on it for once.
It's the sane side, Pat. Honestly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, yeah, guys, thank you. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure.
John, you're always welcome. And we'll talk about this sub-podcast Spider-Man series.
Every week is just us telling Matt why he's wrong about
I'm for it.
some
We
aspect
need
Hey man,
more of those.
I'll come do that. I don't care.